Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. A34M had always been doing multimedia for my church for years and years, so displaying lyrics and creating PowerPoint slides are second nature to me. I was scheduled to take care of the multimedia this morning, so as usual, I came and created what was needed. I set up all of the lyrics, Bible verses, and the slides that were sent from the speaker before I went to the restroom. When I came back, I saw the guy who usually plays the bass, Nate, but he wasn't on schedule today. He was having a conversation with another person behind the multimedia station. I went back to my station and started pre-displaying everything on the screen to make sure that I could read everything. That's when I noticed that Nate was looking at my station. 5 minutes before we started, Nate suddenly asked what I had prepared. I showed him everything. The lyrics, the Bible verses, the slides, just to satisfy his curiosity. Side note, I don't really like Nate for several reasons. He believes in a lot of conspiracies people share on social media, and when someone questions him, he argues nonstop. Most of us just try to avoid starting a conversation with him entirely, including me. Also, whenever he's scheduled to play bass, he tunes his amplifier's volume quite high, higher than the other musical instruments. I can feel the vibration every time he plucks his bass, and the multimedia station is at the very back of the room. He's just super obnoxious. Apparently, his obnoxiousness was at a high level today, because as soon as he saw the slides I prepared, he said that the font size was too small. He didn't say, "It might be too small." No, he said, "It's too small." I told him that it was fine, it was the regular font size we all use week after week, but he wouldn't drop it. By this time, the service had started, but for some reason, he didn't go to find an empty seat in the audience. Instead, he sat on a stool behind my station while repeatedly telling me that the font was too small. By this point, I was listening to his font mantra behind me while displaying the lyrics for the singers. After a couple of minutes, I asked him if he was planning to sit with the audience, and I kid you not, this was his response. "The font is too small, you need to increase it." I couldn't believe it. He was so fixated on my slide's font size that he refused to leave me alone until I fulfilled his wishes. By this point, even the pastor's wife asked him to please have a seat in the audience, to which he told her that it was better for him to sit there because if he sat in the audience, he wouldn't be able to see anything. I had enough. Malicious compliance initiated. While still controlling the displayed lyrics, I also edited the slides while he watched, so I was multitasking. Mind you, the service had already begun, so I couldn't actually display the slides just to make sure. I increased the font so big that the slides looked ridiculous. Before, there were only 10 slides, and one slide could contain 6 to 7 lines of 2 to 3 Bible verses with a translation section below it. Now, there were about 40 slides with 15+ lines that contained only 6 words each. I could barely fit the translation part, and each slide could contain only one verse. It looked totally atrocious. After witnessing his destruction, he patted me on my back, gave me a thumbs up, and went to find an empty seat. I looked at the pastor's wife, and even she shook her head. During the sermon, it was extremely awkward. The speaker was having a difficult time reading from the screen because he kept on pausing after each line. I also had to switch the slides quicker than before because each only consisted of one verse, which interrupted the speaker's pace. After 10 minutes, the speaker gave up and just read from his own Bible, which most of the audience followed suit. I witnessed many audience members pull up their Bible app from their phones and just read from there, even Nate. I texted Nate, "Why are you reading from your phone? I thought you wanted the font bigger so you could read from the screen." And in response he turned and glared at me silently. After the service was finished, the speaker approached me and asked if everything was okay, because the slides didn't look like what I usually made. The pastor's wife approached us, was very apologetic, and explained everything. Then we looked for Nate, but we couldn't find him in the crowd. I guess he was too embarrassed to admit his monstrosity. I worked for a small e-commerce company that had an unusual dynamic between the chief executive officer and the head of technology. There had been a messy divorce between the chief executive officer and chief technology officer, leading the chief executive officer to hire a new director of technology. This director, in turn, hired another individual as his head of business intelligence and data engineering. Initially, they seemed promising and discussed plans to fix all the old code that caused the systems and website to be slow and prone to crashing. However, over time, we all learned that these individuals were merely talk. They couldn't deliver anything they promised, were very arrogant, and often took 2 to 3 hour lunches at the bar, where they would get drunk. Despite frequent protests from other teams within the company, the chief executive officer kept forgiving them because they flattered him, and he harbored a dislike for the old chief technology officer. One day, everything seemed to go terribly wrong. I was leading the data science and analytics team at that time, and had a report that pulled in internal statistics, as well as application programming interface calls, to Google and Adobe. Our live reporting showed that our conversion rate had plummeted, and a quick check with the members of the technology team, who were old hires of the former chief technology officer, and very responsive and competent, confirmed that the website had suddenly gone down around 9:30 a.m. We tried contacting the director and the business intelligence guy, but no one could get a hold of them. They strolled into work much later after the issue had been resolved. Everyone was furious that we couldn't reach them, but they claimed to be heroes who quickly handled the issue. They insisted that it was a distributed denial of service attack that they had managed to thwart. However, soon after, other tech team members shared data that indicated certain metrics were not consistent with a distributed denial of service attack. Under pressure, we learned that the head of business intelligence had been giving some random people a tour of the off-site servers. He saw a loose cable on the ground, picked it up, and plugged it into a slot, creating a feedback loop or something similar that crashed the site. They then went to the bar, and when they noticed the calls, they raced back, unplugged the cable, and rebooted the servers, causing everything to work again. They were severely reprimanded for their terrible behavior, even by the chief executive officer. The two individuals never fully admitted this was the cause, claiming it was both a distributed denial of service attack and a coincidental, exactly timed feedback on the servers. This is when they became petty. Claiming security was inadequate, they removed everyone's ability to download, upgrade, or call any application programming interface without their approval on literally everything. They hoped this would punish us all, and initially we were very upset, but the chief executive officer was back to supporting their antics. That's when inspiration struck. Everyone affected tried to do as many new downloads and updates as possible. In particular, my team, using primarily R and Python at the time, began to request checks to upgrade every library in our codebase and created several scripts that had no real purpose other than to load lots of libraries, hit application programming interfaces, and make plots. These tech guys didn't know how to read either language, and while they suspected mischief, they couldn't prove it. It got so bad that they would have to spend hours every morning with our team, entering passwords for every check. The best part came when they went into our functional code and commented out all application programming interface calls. The scripts failed to run, and an important automated report couldn't be updated, leading to the chief executive officer being unable to update his presentation for the board. We showed him the commit that the business intelligence guy had made and what he had done without consulting us. The chief executive officer screamed at the guy for 30 to 40 minutes and threatened to fire him. The arrogant individual was reduced to tears, crying and begging to keep his job. They immediately announced a new security patch and allowed us to download everything. I got a new job shortly after, but found out that the two individuals were eventually fired for incompetence and being drunk on the job. One of the excellent original tech guys is now running everything, and as far as I know, there haven't been any major problems since. Quick info. I live in a small gated community, about 30 to 40 houses. However, unlike most gated communities, the sidewalk leading into the community from the outside is not gated, meaning literally anyone can come in. There's no sentry at the post next to the gate, as it is an automatic gate. You get in with either a code or a sensor, and the cameras on the sentry post are purely for show and don't work. My dad has a really bad habit of leaving the doors unlocked. All of them. The front door and the two back sliding doors, one in the living room and one in the master bedroom. He does this because he primarily works from home, less than important detail later, and likes to go in the backyard to smoke. So locking the doors all the time is tedious for him. He leaves the house every now and again to replenish his cigarette supply or to get lunch, and he always leaves the doors unlocked. This triggered my anxiety, as around the time we moved in there had been a robbery at one of our neighbors' houses because they left the back door open for their dog, and left the house real quick to pick a child up from school. They had been gone for 10 minutes, and when they returned, the mom's jewelry box and expensive watch had been stolen. So obviously, I wanted the doors to be locked, especially when no one was home even for a moment. When I'm home with someone else there, I feel a little more at ease, but at night I always triple check to make sure the doors are locked, because he doesn't lock them then either. So I also have to sneak into the master bedroom when my parents are asleep, just to make sure their stupid sliding door is locked. One day, I had gone out with a friend for the entire day, and I had reminded my parents that I would likely be back pretty late. We left my house around 11 a.m., and he dropped me off at 9 p.m. When I got out of his car, I realized my mom's car was there, but not my dad's. They only take my dad's car when they're going out for a while. I got a bit nervous but trusted that my mom would have at least checked to make sure the doors were locked before they left. But nope. I got to the front door and looked in the small crevice of the wall and the door to see if the lock was in the wall. It wasn't. I go inside and guess what? Neither of the back doors were locked as well. I got mad, and I mean mad. I texted my mom immediately, asking how long they had been out and how long they were planning on staying out. She texts back the times and steam starts blowing out of my ears. They had been gone since 2 p.m. and were likely not going to come back until near midnight. The house could have been completely stripped of literally all our belongings in that amount of time. I called her and started shouting that I had just gotten home, and all the doors were unlocked. She panics in response and asks if anything is out of place. After a quick run through the house, I deduced that nothing seemed to have been taken. So no one must have noticed. She sighs in relief and says that she asked my dad to lock all the doors before they left, and she would talk with him about it now. When they get back, my dad is angry at me. He starts yelling at me saying, "This is my house, I do what I want, yada yada yada." When I protest that we could have been robbed, he decides to show off just how big his ego is and says, "Honey, look at me, no one would dare rob the house when I'm living in it. Everyone here is scared of me." I stood there staring at him, my jaw dropped, and it was at that moment I wondered how my mom fell for this moron. He puts on the "ha, I've won" smirk and then says, "Nobody's brave enough to rob this house, relax." Fine. I'll relax. For the next couple of weeks, I make sure to go out of the house as much as possible, usually to my previously mentioned friend's place. And I'd always take all my valuables with me. My laptop, my 3DS and all its games, my Nintendo Switch, and some of my own expensive jewelry. The reason for this is because my parents like going out together when I'm not home because they feel they'd be obligated to bring me with them. I had told my friend about what was going on, so they suggested leaving my valuables at his house so I don't have to bring them with me everywhere I go, to which I happily obliged. And then it finally happened. As I mentioned before, my dad works from home. His office, it's just a large desk with 2 laptops and 2 monitors, was in the living room near the sliding door. His work was primarily done on a laptop that cost well over $900. He had tweaked and added some things to it to make it even better than it was previously. I'm not very tech savvy, so I'm not 100% sure what exactly he did to improve it. The other laptop was about $500, which he used mostly for personal stuff. So one day, I ran out of paper in my journal and decided to walk to the local Walmart, which was about 10 minutes away, to buy a new one. My mom was at work and my dad was likely out getting lunch, so I left the empty house carelessly, leaving the doors unlocked. I took my sweet time walking to that Walmart. The usual 20 to 30-minute walk to and from there was taking about an hour and 15. When I got to the final crosswalk to go across the street to my community, my phone rang. It was Dad. He's in a panic, saying he couldn't find his laptops. They weren't on his desk or in his bags or anywhere else he could have left them. He asks me if I had seen them. I tell him, I saw them on your desk before I left. Are you sure they're not there? After a long pause, he asked me where I was, and I told him I was walking back from Walmart. He didn't know I had taken the scenic route back home, so he thought that in the span of 20 or so minutes, someone had come into the house and unplugged both his laptops from the monitors, taking them, the chargers, and his spare cash in one of the drawers. When I got home, he had gone to our neighbors' houses, asking if they had seen anyone go into the house. All but one said no. That one told him that they had seen a man enter the house through the sliding door to the living room and leave. But she thought it was my dad, since she'd seen him frequently leaving the house through the back doors when he goes out, especially during the past few weeks. My dad looked like half of his soul had been sucked out of his body by Satan himself when he found this out and came back, and it was lots of fun watching him explain to my mom why his laptops, spare cash, and my mom's iPad were missing. Some calls to the police were made. The neighbor described what the man was wearing to the police, and after the police questioned some other neighbors, one that lived close to the gate had said they clearly saw a man with the clothes described walking out of the community with a large bag. After about 2 weeks of searching, the police found the man and he was arrested. The laptops and my mom's iPad were returned, but my dad's personal laptop had been factory reset, the iPad screen was cracked, and the money was gone. The doors always stayed locked after that. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. So this just happened a few hours ago. Presently, we're at the hospital getting my friend checked out. My friend has authorized me to share her account. My friend Warm Water, not her real name, was at a local supermarket, which is part of a chain of stores based out of Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Colorado, California, Oregon, and Oklahoma. They have a very distinctive name. My friend arrived at the store to do her regular food shopping. She goes on Friday at 11 a.m. sharp every week to get the food for our weekly tabletop role-playing game party we have on Saturdays. While I was asleep, I have worked a graveyard swing shift for 15 years. It started snowing. Despite the fact that it snows here a couple of times a year, for some reason, people went into full disaster mode. We're talking about hitting up all the stores, hoarding, panicking, the works. Having seen this before last year firsthand, you'd think these people had never seen snow before. We call this phenomenon the apocalypse. People go crazy over 2 inches of snow, while people in New England are like, hold my drink. Logically, I also concluded the lines were so long at the store because A, it's a payday Friday for many people, and B, the coronavirus situation. Multiple cases have been reported in my county in Washington state, and it's only increasing by the day, so people around here are acting like this is 28 days later or something. The store had something like 2,000 people in it, according to Warm Water, and the lines were going out the door and around the back. She managed to get in after a bit of a wait and do her shopping. She was about to approach a checkout line when an angry customer attacked. "Hey, that's my spot in line," she shouted at Warm Water. "Ha?" she asked, genuinely confused but still walking forward with her cart. "No, you don't. That spot is mine. Move it," the angry customer demanded. A couple of things to note about my friend Warm Water. First, she is a fully transitioned male-to-female transgender person. She used to be a 6'2", 300-pound male. Now she's a 6'2", 225-pound female. She's lost a good deal of weight due to overcoming her depression and adopting a healthy diet and exercise routine. She also epitomizes petty pro-revenge and malicious compliance, with a history of not taking anyone's nonsense. Seeing the writing on the wall, Warmwater just kept moving and positioned her cart about a foot behind the man in front of her. This set the angry customer off. "You witch!" she shouted, then rammed her cart repeatedly into Warmwater's knee. Warmwater had been in a car accident in her teens and has a bad knee as a result. The angry customer scored, in role-playing game terms, a critical hit, dislocating Warmwater's knee. Warmwater fell over, screaming in pain. Before summoning up the kind of adrenaline you see in movies, she pulled herself up with her cart, took one good look at the angry customer, and delivered a punch that nearly knocked her out of her shoes. When I eventually went to pick her up, witnesses said it was a haymaker worthy of a prize fight. Due to my friend being transgender, she had been in many fights growing up, and she knew how to throw a punch. The angry customer got up when she regained her senses and began to shout, "Assault! Assault! Help!" and just about anything she could to get everybody looking at her so she could play the victim card. Unfortunately for her, people were already looking at her because of the scene she had been making in this high-density environment. It didn't take long for store security to get involved. In my state, as far as I know, loss prevention security can hold and detain you like police until the police arrive. They came, and after being told what happened, moved to detain the angry customer. The entire time, as the angry customer's face was already starting to swell from the punch, she claimed repeatedly that Warmwater hit her to steal her spot in line. The security personnel told her that there were cameras in the store, and that they would determine who was at fault. This is about the time I got the call to come pick her up and take her to the hospital. Her roommate, who lives a few blocks away, was on the way to pick up the groceries and the car. It didn't take long for the local sheriff's office to arrest the angry customer for assault. Right now, we're at the doctor's office, waiting on the results of the x-rays. We're not sure what they're going to find because Warmwater's knee has a tendency to slip all the time from her old injury. But at the moment, she's resting comfortably. She's going to contact her lawyer when she's off the pain medication the doctors gave her to go through the process of suing the angry customer for the hospital bills. First, a little bit of background. My dad has been biased in favor of Republicans for as long as I can remember. Admittedly, he's voted only for Republicans since he started voting because he never trusted Democrats. I assume he was influenced by Rush Limbaugh before I was born, as he also influenced me with Rush when I was a politically ignorant teenager in 2016. Before that, he would always angrily rant about Obama. Typical conservative stuff so far, right? But in recent years, he's gone off the deep end, believing more and more conspiracy theories like the Earth being flat and Michelle Obama secretly being a man. While I've stopped supporting Trump, my dad has doubled and tripled down on his support, wearing Make America Great Again hats in public almost every day. I should also mention that a while ago, I made the mistake of telling my dad I thought Biden was the lesser evil in this election. My dad was flabbergasted, going, "You think he's the lesser evil?" and treating me like an idiot because I disagree with him politically. Now we flash forward to a couple of days ago. My dad and I are in the car on the way to the grocery store, and he decides to start yelling at me about politics. He starts going off about how Democrats want to kill every single Republican. No joke, he actually believes this. When I tried to tell him he was likely believing fear-mongering propaganda, he interrupted me, yelling, "No, it's true. They want to kill US. They want to kill US." Since appealing to reason didn't work, I tried to tell my dad there are radical elements on both sides because I assumed he thought some random person online represented the entire Democratic Party for some reason. I told him that there are Nazis on the right, and he started yelling again. I know that's nonsense, that's nonsense, that's nonsense, just refusing to listen to me at all. I told my dad he was acting like he was in a cult, and he instantly yelled, "You're in a cult," because not thinking everyone to the left of Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump is going to kill me makes me a cult member, I guess. Keep in mind, he's yelling all this at me while wearing his Make America Great Again hat. I tell my dad I don't want to talk to him about politics, and he laughs and grabs me roughly by the shoulder. We don't talk about it for the rest of the day, and I hope he won't anymore, but it makes me uncomfortable while we're at the grocery store. He keeps treating me like I'm the dumbest person in the world, because I don't think Donald Trump is the greatest president in recent history, and America's savior. It's at the point where I'm afraid to vote for Biden because I'm scared of what my dad would do to me. I remember back when I voted in 2020, after my dad asked me who I voted for. I was still influenced back then, so I voted for Trump, one of the biggest regrets of my life. I told him this, and he said something like, "I already know because I watched you." I don't remember the exact wording, but it was basically that. I confronted him about it years later, and he says he didn't, but I still remember what he said before. He shouldn't be allowed to do that, but I feel like he will anyway in 2024. I'm worried about what he'll do if Trump loses again. I'll probably be forced to vote for a third party in the general election because of my fear of him. Even though I'm an adult, I still live with him, and it isn't worth incurring his wrath just to vote for the lesser of two evils, unfortunately. Sorry if this came off unorganized. I don't normally write stuff like this on Reddit, but this has been bothering me since it happened, and I wanted to talk about it since I couldn't find anyone else online who had to deal with this specific level of deranged politics from their dad. There's more I could talk about, but I don't want this to be too long. I just feel trapped here with my Make America Great Again dad, and it's giving me this sense of unease. It hurts to know how far gone he is, because up until now I still had a little hope he could get out of this, but now it's obvious he won't. Leaving in the near future as unlikely. I'm a high school dropout who can't drive. I won't get into that though because it's personal. But just know there aren't many opportunities for me to leave, at least in the near future, so I don't really know what to do. I want this election to finally be over, but I'm also scared of what comes next. I just wish I could live in boring, safe times instead of now. Hello and welcome. I'm a 24-year-old female, but at the time of this story, I was around 19 and pursuing a professional course in goldsmithing. This story involves a 15 or 16-year-old female classmate who acted like an entitled jerk, thinking she was the center of the world, and tried to get us, me and the rest of the class, in trouble for something we didn't do. Let's call her Jenny. Here are some things you need to know about the school and the professional course for those who might not be familiar with it. I don't know how it works in your country. You may wonder how a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old ended up in the same class. It's because my course was for those who hadn't completed the 12th grade. Either you just finished the 9th grade and chose a particular course for the rest of high school, or you changed courses, or for some reason, you couldn't pass the 12th grade, which was my situation in another course. This made the age range in my class vary from 15 years old to 23 years old. At the beginning of the year, there weren't enough students in other courses to form a class. The minimum was 10 students. To solve the problem, the school decided to merge all students from the other courses into the main course of the school, goldsmithing, until the other courses had enough students. Then, the students could request a transfer. As you can imagine, not everyone was happy about this arrangement, Jenny included, and she often complained about it. Right, let's get to the context of the story first. Jenny was having a hard time with her boyfriend and wanted everyone to know about it constantly. I felt bad for her initially because she would cry about him, but then she would have moments where she would check out guys on Instagram and say she was going to hook up with them, to show him, her boyfriend, and then continue to cry about him. She also complained about the school, the teachers, her parents, other students, and her whole life. Every conversation had to be about her and her situation with her boyfriend. Like, we get it, geez, I'm sorry things aren't working out with him, but we heard it like 30 times in a single conversation. Jenny took a liking to me because I was nice to everyone, including her, during the first week of school. I had no backbone back then, and she took advantage of that. We had a classmate who lived very close to the school, so we sometimes hung out at his place during lunchtime. Jenny always found an excuse to keep me from going with them, even though I was invited. And even if I said no multiple times, I always gave in and went with her because I didn't want her to be alone. And for some reason, I wanted to be polite. I was a naive moron. Once, she took me to her apartment to show me something. By the way, she said she lived close, but we walked for more than 15 minutes, and I thought we were going to hang out. But nope, she forgot her keys to the mail or something and needed me to reach for the letters because my hands are skinny, and I have long fingers. I actually thought we were going to hang out at her place after that, but nope, we went back to school. So yeah, I never considered her a friend. I was just trying to be polite, but I really should have stayed away from her and stood my ground. Now, the story you've been waiting for. What happened that led to the cops being called on us? In the first class of the morning on that particular day, the teacher was doing the usual roll call. When it came to one of the guys in the class, Jenny got upset. Jenny, "Oh no, don't say his name, teacher. How, why not?" We all looked at Jenny, puzzled. Jenny, "It's the name of my boyfriend and I'm mad at him. Just hearing his name makes me dead." We just stared at her. What? The poor guy just happened to have the same name as her boyfriend. What was that about? But we all shrugged it off, and the morning continued without any incident. At the end of break time, I was walking with some of my classmates to our next class when we heard a commotion near our locker rooms. Since we are all nosy, we went to check it out. When we arrived, Jenny was handing her phone to Mark, 20-year-old classmate, and the rest of the class was there too. Mark listened on the other end of the phone for 2 seconds before angrily handing it back to Jenny and trying to walk away. But Jenny was starting to get physical, and Mark was about to be too. Just so you know, Jenny was about my height, 5.2 feet, and Mark was around 5.9 feet. So yeah, it was basically a Chihuahua barking at a Doberman. We separated them, but the school was filled with angry yelling, and the staff got involved. Jenny grabbed her stuff and ran out of the school. Apparently, she had an argument with some of the boys in our class because of the scene she made that morning. I can't remember what caused her to do what she did next, but Jenny slapped Mark in the face. Then she called her cousin, which led to the phone call in front of the lockers. Her cousin was threatening Mark, saying he was on his way to the school to beat him up. I can't recall what Mark said to provoke this, but my other classmates said he didn't do anything to deserve a slap and a threat. When we all calmed down, the staff got agitated and something happened outside. We all went to the school entrance and saw Jenny talking to 2 cops. There is a police station close to our school, so it was normal for them to come quickly. But still, we were all shocked to see the cops. Why were they here? We watched the cops talking to Jenny, then to our director and main teacher, and back to Jenny. We wanted to see more, but we were told to go to class. Jenny's cousin never showed up as far as I know. Jenny came back during the afternoon break. I was about to eat my delicious chocolate bread at the school bar when she appeared out of nowhere. I asked her what happened to cause the cops to come, and she said not to worry about it. And you know what she did next? She asked to eat half of my chocolate bread. The audacity! I was so fed up with her that I finally said no, very firmly, took my precious treasure, and sat somewhere else. I looked to see her reaction, and even though she had her back to me, I saw a teacher talking to her with a concerned look on her face. I guess Jenny was crying, but I didn't care and ate in silence. She didn't come back after that. We got word of what happened that led to the police appearing. Apparently, she claimed we made a group chat on Instagram to talk badly about her behind her back, and she infiltrated the group to get evidence, saying we bullied her every day. We didn't do any of that, and soon, the police discovered that all the accounts in the group chat were created by Jenny to get us in trouble. The school had enough of her, and told her that while this incident could have led to her expulsion, they wouldn't do that, but advised her to leave on her own, as she wasn't welcome anymore. They didn't expel her because they wanted her to have a chance to find another school that would take her in, since all the other courses at our school didn't want her. I don't know what happened to her after that, and honestly, I couldn't care less. I just hope she got help because she was really troubled. Now that I'm writing this story, it got me thinking, If the group chat was already there, with enough conversation and a bunch of fake accounts when she talked to the cops, it means she was planning to take action sooner or later. That was premeditated. Anyway, sorry for the long text. There was another incident at my school with my class, but that's a story for another time. Thanks for reading. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.